there are Amazon aggregator agencies that advocate for a large number of Amazon SKUs in bulk and incentivize publishers with increased rates on a monthly basis to promote top performing brands and SKUs that work well for their program. And so they're able to drive growth in mass that way. The mechanics are a little bit different, but they also do have a more unique but interesting relationships with publishers.
Welcome to the Ecom Breakthrough Podcast. Are you ready to unlock the full potential and growth in your business? You've already crossed 7 figures in sales, but the challenge is knowing how to take your business to the next level. Join Josh Hadley, an 8-figure ecom business owner and investor, as he interviews highly successful business owners. Get ready, because you're going to learn specific actions you can take today to help your business reach its full potential and leave a lasting impact on the world.
Welcome to the Ecom Breakthrough Podcast. I'm your host, Josh Hadley, where I interview the top business leaders in e-commerce. Past guests include Kevin King, Michael E. Gerber, author of The E-Myth, and Stephen Pope from My Amazon Guy. Today, I am speaking with Jessica Sieb. She is a publishing and brand consultant. And today, we're going to be talking about the future of affiliate marketing, especially in the e-commerce space. This episode is brought to you by Ecom Breakthrough, where I specialize in investing in and scaling 7-figure e-commerce companies to 8 figures and beyond. If you're an ambitious e-commerce entrepreneur looking for a partner who can help take your business to the next level, my team and I bring hands-on experience, strategic insights, and the resources needed to fuel your growth. So if you or someone you know is ready to scale or looking for an investment partner, or even looking for consulting, reach out to me directly at josh@ecombreakthrough.com. That's ecom with 2 M's, and then let's turn your dreams into reality. But today I am super excited to introduce y'all to Jessica Sieb. Jessica worked at BuzzFeed for over 5 years and with Rolling Stones for a year and a half. Jessica is definitely an expert when it comes to connecting the audience with a brand and the role that affiliate marketing plays in reaching out to your intended market. So with that introduction, welcome to the show, Jessica.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Jessica, super excited to have you on the show. We met at Affiliate Summit East, and you were on one of the panels, and I could tell you had a complete depth of experience in affiliate marketing, specifically for Amazon-focused brands and e-commerce in general. And so that's why I knew, man, I need to get her on the show, share the wealth of wisdom that she has with everybody else. So I appreciate your time joining us today.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me. It's in such an interesting space. It's been a wild ride, kind of building my career on helping publishers and brands grow their programs through this channel. It's something that has always seemed so natural to me as a consumer, specifically an online consumer. So working with partners and figuring out ways to which we can solve the internet's most, or not most, but some of their simpler problems has been such a joy of mine.
So why don't you just tell people and give people a quick overview of your career? What were you doing at BuzzFeed? What were you doing at Rolling Stones?
Yeah, well, I think my first job actually in New York kind of sets the stage for the other 2 roles that I ended up taking on. I used to plan media for NBC News, MSNBC, CNBC properties through the 2016 election. That included a media plans, anything from out-of-home print, digital, television, all with the goal of driving television attribution. So we were trying to convert drivers on the West Side Highway to butts and seats on couches, tuning in to watching whichever the primary show was that we were focused on for that campaign and that season. So very advanced advertising metrics being used to measure the impact and influence that each of our channels had on driving a true conversion. And I was looking to make a career change. I had learned a lot in a year and a half working in that role. I took the role. It was probably the lowest paying of all my offers that I had, but I knew the opportunity was going to be so great and that I was going to work with a bunch of talented people and learn a lot, and I did. Fast forward a year and a half in, I knew I had some experience under my belt that was valuable to other industries and other teams. I was exploring roles at a variety of places. A role at BuzzFeed for an affiliate manager showed up. And at the time, I had a few friends at BuzzFeed. They were like, the affiliate team is the affiliate commerce, like at the time it was called Product Labs team, were the cool new kids on the block. They were doing some really important work in the partnerships and commerce ecosystem. No one really knew what they were doing, but they were making like money faster than they knew what to do with it. And from like overnight, there were several $1 million being attributed to this team. And that was still looking towards the end of what that program became, was like small drops in the bucket of what we were able to build. I met with the lead who was tasked with building the affiliate commerce program, Neela Ali, who remains a wonderful friend and mentor of mine to this day. And we realized our skill sets were very complementary. I had an understanding of media attribution, how to navigate publishers, ad sales down, because BuzzFeed was a seller. Like I worked closely with BuzzFeed to close campaigns that I had worked on. So I knew most of their products. I knew their capabilities. I knew like generally how the site was run through those partnerships and through also friends who had worked there. And I also knew a great deal about hyper advanced attribution for not even commerce brands, but television tune-in. And so the methodology for tracking a sale online with cookies and link clicks and other things was a much simpler task and much easier to optimize for. It felt more exciting than arbitrarily measuring tune-in, although I do love television and still that space a great bit. It seemed a lot less lower stakes than working for news, helping people shop online, which I'm sure everyone had a little bit of news fatigue after 2016. It was something I was looking for in my next role. I did not know that I would have such an opportunity to grow a business as much as I did in working with that program, working closely with very large retail partners to create and invent a new way of working in the affiliate space, establishing best practices for paid placements, attribution, reporting, methodology, distribution across a number of channels. It was a really wild and fun roller coaster to be on. The business we built helped take BuzzFeed public. I worked closely with our investor relations teams and with notes to our board members on how to kind of explain and breathe life into the work that we were doing, and share that with external and internal partners on top of, kind of steering this massive jet while we're still like doing a little bit of operating on it. It was very fun. And I learned a lot about a high growth business at a time that was important to a lot of partners. And with that, I have a lot of learnings that I can share with other brands and other publishers on how they can replicate similar success.
Man, Jessica, it sounds like this is exactly why I have you on the show, because you did amazing things there at BuzzFeed and you've got such in-depth experience with affiliate marketing, attribution. So I'm interested to hear on the BuzzFeed side, is that primarily BuzzFeed's, like, is that their primary source of revenue, is affiliate revenue? Is that how they monetize that business?
It is not. So BuzzFeed, first and foremost, was a traditional media publisher with a very strong advertising business. It's a public company, so their earnings statements are public record. It is a significant portion of their revenue, but it's not the majority by any means.
Okay. But obviously it became a very important factor of them being able to grow and go public there. So great insight. So Jessica, as you're managing, let's say you're at BuzzFeed and let's say I'm a brand owner, you're at BuzzFeed still. How am I supposed to reach out and try to get my products up on BuzzFeed? Like, what does the day-to-day look like on your side of like, How do you determine what brand you would be pitching on BuzzFeed or selecting to, affiliate link to and things like that?
Yeah. Most publishers programs day in and day out. A lot of established programs have 3,000 or more onboarded brands. Early days, we spent a lot of time, reviewing proposals, onboarding brands in the networks, negotiating rates. Now, I would say at the state in the game, most publishers have a very strong network of partners that they work with directly. And so a lot less of their time is spent in brand and product discovery. Most of the time when they're looking to onboard a new partner, it's because it's a sensational brand. It is something that their consumers are demanding. Again, they've spent years building up an existing foundation of partnerships and lists. So if you're working with an established player in the space, your voice and explanation for why they should spend, take the 10 minutes out of their day out of this and read one email out of probably the 1,000 more emails that they receive daily to onboard one new partner that they may or may not have ever heard of, has to be compelling. And that is an arena that I know is very difficult for brands to break through independently at the moment. Email is probably the best way and most efficient way if you're going to chart that goal or chart that path independently. Another means of doing that more efficiently is coming on board, depending on if your brand is exclusively on Amazon or a D2C partner, picking either an aggregator, Amazon aggregator agency, or a performance PR agency who already has the really strong publisher relationships to advocate for your brands and help drive growth. Depending on what platform you're hoping to optimize for, some agencies have more experience with D2C versus Amazon. There's no harm in working with both. If I knew of an agency that did both well, I would definitely name drop them here. But I think some specialize in other arenas more steadily than others. Yeah, I think it's to a brand's benefit, especially with the 7-figure brands that you're working with primarily, to explore enlisting additional resources to kind of help cut through that clutter, because I, for one, know that you can't respond to every pitch email. You can't even open all of them. There's so many that these publishers are receiving day in and day out. Imagine if they have 3,000 direct partners and all of those partners email them once per day. Imagine how many emails that is. And then they're trying to also filter through and see which are actually actionable and relevant or are going to generate incremental revenue. So finding ways to be strategic and efficient with your communications is key.
Awesome. All right. So Jessica, basically what you said is if you want to have your brand featured in one of these bigger media outlets, right? Whether it's a BuzzFeed or Rolling Stones or whatever it may be, they're getting hit up on a daily basis, probably receiving hundreds, if not thousands of emails from anybody and their dog reaching out saying, hey, check this out, check out my brand. And what you're saying is like, it's literally impossible for them to actually take the time to review every single one. So your recommended approach is try to work with like an agency that maybe already has a relationship with that network representative, right? Or that media outlet that already trusts, that agency partner. And that agency partner can maybe share, hey, here's a new upcoming brand that I think is genuinely worth your time, BuzzFeed. Is that what you're telling us that would be kind of your recommended path?
Yes, that for D2C brands or there's a slightly different setup for brands who are exclusively on Amazon. There are Amazon aggregator agencies that advocate for a large number of Amazon SKUs in bulk and incentivize publishers with increased rates on a monthly basis to promote top performing brands and SKUs that work well for their program. And so they're able to drive growth in mass that way. The mechanics are a little bit different, but they also do have a more unique but interesting relationships with publishers.
Okay, that makes sense. So do you have, are there any agency names that you can drop as it relates to the Amazon aggregator affiliate agency that is basically taking some top performing brands and their top performing SKUs and then rolling them up and saying, hey, media partners, like promote these guys. Like we've already vetted them. They've got high amounts of revenue. You can make some good earnings on these. We're giving you bonus commission. Do you have any agencies that you would recommend that people could consider reaching out to?
I think, yes, a lot of people in the industry are familiar with Advon, Levanta, Archer Affiliates. There have been a few others that were available and have since sunsetted their services. There's a number of partners that are still withstanding and operating in an efficient capacity, and I think those are probably the top three.
Okay, so I have a question then on that because our brand, we're on Levanta, we're on Archer Affiliates. Advon is something new. I haven't heard of that one yet. But what would be my approach if I'm just a brand and really like to get onto Levanta, all you do is like you connect your Amazon account and it like imports all of your products, right? And then you can set your commission. Same thing with the Archer Affiliates. Am I just like beholden to, well, hopefully some media partner comes, looks, and finds me? Or is there a strategy for me to still be reaching out, whether it be on those platforms? Would you recommend like, hey, on Levanta, there's actually like a messaging portal, like go and try to contact the media buyers there? Or kind of what's your experience on the media buying side? What are you looking for before you decide to work with some brand on Amazon?
I found that Levanta and Archer Affiliates and even Advon were very hands-on and kind of sharing a full list of all of the available SKUs and providing advice based on the publisher as to what SKUs should be considered based on their top performers. So they're advocating based on the data that they see directly within those larger bulk emails and their partnership relationship management systems. I might honestly contact, if you have a direct line of communication with your partners at those agencies, reaching out to them and saying, hey, I'm, looking to drive optimization and growth through your channel. I'm wondering what's the most efficient way to communicate to the partners that you're already working with, how we can test, like increasingly incentivizing them to cover us if you're not seeing results following onboarding immediately. Also working with them to say, how should we be thinking about this? How often should we be checking back? What is like understanding the benchmarks and estimates for driving expectant growth for your SKUs and your category subset, and going from there. You can try to reach out independently, but again, given the volume of messages that hit publisher inboxes, or even writer inboxes, you're much more likely to get an efficient response from a contact who has a contact than you are on your own, unless it's a brand that's like gone viral on TikTok or has seen a lot of traction and is something that topically they're excited about covering organically.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense. So what your maybe recommended approach would be is like, yes, get your products on Levanta, Archer Affiliates. But then you've got to reach out to your point of contact there at Levanta, Archer Affiliates and say, hey, how can we get our products in front of or covered by more of these publishers more often? Is that kind of your approach, is more work with your relationship at Levanta more than trying to worry about like, oh, I've got to go find the contact at BuzzFeed or something like that?
Correct. Because the point of onboarding with these platforms is so that you're joining a group that already has an existing relationship with all of these brands. And so use their network to your advantage. And it's likely that the COO or CEO of Levanta is going to get a much faster response than independent brand name pitching themselves independently, like as a part of, and they can also advocate for your brand in the context of here's the average performance for similar products in this category. We see this brand outperforming in this area. They can give more context than what you're able to see because you, I'm sure, don't see competitive brand performance in the same way that these aggregators do. And so they can kind of speak more strategically to where you're going to have a competitive advantage and advise and reach out on your behalf where there's time to. And they may also be able to advise on strategies or contacts that you should try yourself that they have seen be effective for other brands.
Awesome. Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Okay. So Jessica, you've got Advon, Archer Affiliates, Levanta. Is there any others that come to your mind right now?
Not at the moment, and I feel like I'm going to get yelled at after this podcast airs for forgetting some people, but there are always new players entering the space. There are tons of experts. You can't really, especially with the Amazon advocate agencies, you can't really go wrong with those. If you want to have a blended D2C and Amazon approach, I'd say having a traditional, not even traditional because they're kind of new within the last 5 years, performance PR agency that understands how to drive growth on for both D2C brands and Amazon retailers. And that is a very narrow specialty. A few that come to mind for those are Helen Koo's PR agency, Dream Day, JLS PR and Communications. JLS actually does manage a number of Amazon brands and advocates for both Amazon coverage and also D2C coverage for those partners. There are a number of others, LaRue PR, that also do really great brand advocacy. There are other larger affiliate agencies that either specialize. I found that they mostly specialize in D2C coverage and growing D2C brands. They're less in tune with like Amazon performance. I think there is a huge opportunity to kind of blend the two arts and sciences, even though they are different metrics, but to be able to measure growth and impact across both because they're complementary. In my mind, you see something direct to site, but you get 2-day prime shipping. You have originally been driven to the D2C site, but if you convert on Amazon, being able to measure the effectiveness or try and close the loop on that path to purchase, I think is a really significant opportunity for these types of agencies to prove and drive value. So yeah, depending on your brand setup and what's of importance, I would recommend doing some research and understanding which of these agencies has a more firm specialty in operating at the capacity at which you prefer. There's no wrong or right reason to. You can work with multiple. Emma Grace Moon is another one who does really great D2C. You can also work with a performance PR D2C agency and an Amazon aggregator separately if you'd like, or an Amazon SKU optimization agency. So yeah, it really depends on what the brand's unique priorities are at the time.
Okay. So would you say like the more the merrier, like get on all of these platforms and just go all in? Or would you say like be more selective?
I think as long as you have a means of deduplicating efforts across the Amazon teams, and that you feel confident with, there's no harm in that I can see in working with several. With performance PR brands, that's something that you probably want to pick one and roll with that one because the contacts are going to be the same. They're going to be fighting for the same coverage, and it will be difficult or not fighting for the same coverage, but reaching out to the same contacts, and it will be difficult to understand who drove what placement or what coverage increase if you're not having one point of contact that's kind of navigating that relationship.
Okay. And then for the performance PR agencies, you said these are the ones that are going to do like D2C, a blend of D2C and Amazon. Is that correct?
Primarily D2C in my experience. Some also do a blend of Amazon, but they may not have the same level of reporting that an Amazon growth specialist agency like the Levanta, Advons, and Archer Affiliates of the world may have. They just have really advanced reporting for measuring incrementality on Amazon that hopefully becomes available to some of these PR networks, so that they can report more seamlessly on both. Some have their own, some performance PR agencies have their own means of measuring that incrementality and working with the brands directly on referral links to attribute attribution. But again, it depends on the brand's priorities and if the strategies are separate, holistic, how they're considering growth. In theory, they can be separate. Ideally, I think they are cohesive because shopping online is, that there's not a unique path to purchase to Target or to Amazon that is completely unique to D2C as well. I made a purchase this morning where I was checking several retailers for the same product to see who would ship the fastest. And, having two different teams working on two different strategies doesn't really tell that story effectively. You can operate in that way, but I think closing the loop long term is a really great opportunity for both the Amazon teams and the performance PR groups.
Awesome. Okay, makes a lot of sense. For the ones that you said do a decent job as of right now, kind of like blending the two worlds, D2C and Amazon affiliate marketing, you said Dream Day, JLS, LaRue PR. Is that it? Did you have any others that I missed?
Emma Grace Moon, and then Helen Koo, I think, if you missed that.
Emma Grace Moon. Helen, what was the last one? Helen?
She's the founder of Blossom PM Agency.
Blossom PM.
And all of these agencies also have specialties. Some are focused on growth for D2C exclusive brands. Others have category focuses, like Blossom does beauty and lifestyle. Emma Grace Moon does a number of D2C brands. JLS PR has a lot of Amazon exclusive brands also that do have some D2C activity as well. It just really depends on the category, the specialty. You should be able to, from any of their websites, get a sense of the types of brands they support most consistently and where you might fit in best, or where you might be able to take advantage, or your brand might be able to take advantage of the context that PR person already has.
Yeah. Okay. Love that. And thanks for sharing those agency names. That definitely helps. And obviously each brand owner needs to find the right one for themselves.
Correct.
Now, Jessica, I'm curious to hear from your perspective. When we met at Affiliate Summit East, one of the things that piqued my interest is you had said, actually brands that are on Amazon kind of have a leg up maybe compared to the ones that are D2C only. Maybe they're not on Amazon. What you maybe told me, correct me if I'm wrong, is that these publishers prefer to promote, or I guess link to Amazon products, just because they know that they've already built in the reporting systems, right? And they've probably got lots of other products that they're publishing and getting affiliate revenue from compared to D2C. So my question is, if I'm an e-commerce brand owner, yes, I'm on Amazon, I'm trying to start up my D2C site, what would be your recommendation? Do you double down on Amazon because most of these, publishers prefer Amazon, or do you try to do both and try to do D2C, or lean into one over the other? Can you help me understand what you would do in that case?
Yes. And I'm going to be careful with my words here. I wouldn't say publishers prefer Amazon. And I'll explain that briefly. Amazon converts at the highest rate compared to most retailers online because it is an online exclusive brand. Almost at majority, there are some stores, but at majority, Amazon is exclusively online. They have guaranteed shipping. Consumers are already logged in. You really only need to make 2 clicks to make a purchase. And if you see a product that a publisher has influenced you to buy in that moment and you decided you needed it, you add it to your cart, you check out. Everything that you had in your cart before you saw that product gets attributed to that publisher if you close out in that session. And it's a great way to learn more about the consumer and what they're purchasing outside of what you've recommended. The barrier to conversion is really low, which results in super high conversion rates. a large sum of revenue being made via Amazon for a lot of publishers. That being said, true and ethical and journalists do value retailer diversity. It would be really upsetting for the entire internet's worth of product recommendations to live exclusively on Amazon. Most publishers do value linking out to Walmart's, Targets, but even not only those larger retail behemoths, also small businesses, D2C brands that they know not every product starts on Amazon. Not every product or an brand founder has the capital or the connections or the ability to just launch a brand on Amazon. And journalists understand this. They understand that there's value in unique products and things that aren't produced in mass, things that are you're investing in a person who's spun up their own clothing site or their own jewelry business out of a small town in the US, and they want to support those brands just as much as they want to make sure they're writing profitable stories and making money for the companies that they work for that in turn employ them. So it's a tough balance. I wouldn't say they prefer Amazon, but they know that Amazon is a very effective vehicle for sustaining growth for their business. That said, they do want to link out to D2C brands. They do value giving that support to other partners in that way. Brands just have to understand that they have a limited amount of bandwidth and real estate, and they have to strategically balance how they go about promoting and incorporating brands that are not the big three, big four, big five, whoever, and without there being an opportunity cost for foregoing that Amazon link, which most very advanced programs know the cost of adding or removing an affiliate link. Like an average link makes this amount of money, an average non-Amazon link makes this amount of money. Here's the revenue that you're letting go of to swap that link to direct to consumer. They're very much aware of this and have tried strategies to make sure that they mitigate those losses, like including multiple link and purchase options under products that they recommend. So yes, that is the my way of clearing up that statement. I just don't want it to be mistaken that publishers prefer this, but it's more so an effective medium for them to sustain growth for their businesses. That said, that means it's a huge advantage for brands to have a presence on Amazon. It's a huge advantage to have a presence for both. And ideally, if you can have your products sold at Walmart, Target, also D2C, diversity is also key. These publishers likely have relationships with all of those brands, and the more places that they can drive to your products and seed or sow thoughts of credibility and other positive consumer reinforcement towards this is why you should be making a product that you may have never heard of, a purchase of a product that you may have never heard before because it's sold in all these trusted spaces in addition to D2C. That's valuable. And that also gives the publisher a lot of flexibility in the ways in which they can cover your product and include you within content as it is relevant. So yes, I would say being on Amazon is an advantage, but it's not the end all be all. And that's understanding that relationship and the decision tree and the opportunity costs that the publisher is facing at any given point where they're incorporating a link within content is going to help you more strategically pitch those brands because you understand what their thought process and considerations are when creating those placements. It's not so much like, hey, I saw you wrote this roundup of these products. Can you include a link to my brand? It's why was the order of that post built in that way? Are there certain keywords in retailer brands that are helping that post rank? Do they have paid relationships that are guaranteeing that they maintain a certain number of Amazon, Target, Walmart links within content for any given period? There are several steps. There are a lot of ingredients that go into making a publisher commerce sandwich, and not all of them can be understood objectively from an onlooking brand or partner or editorial team even. So that is my long-winded explainer on that.
I love that. And I think you gave us an excellent lay of the land. And I think that, those brands that are especially like an Amazon first brand, I think that they should see that definitely as an advantage. And I think that for a long time, even for D2C brands, right, that are native D2C, they got started on Shopify. They didn't start on Amazon. Like working with affiliates and influencers is like, that's the way that they bring in traffic to their entire site. And so if Amazon brands, because a lot of them aren't necessarily focused on the PR side of things, if they flip that script and if they're already dominating on Amazon, and then you could start connecting with these publishers, getting additional traffic to your listings, makes that Amazon flywheel start to spin that much faster, and you just continue to have success upon success. So Jessica, my next question for you would be this. As you've been doing this consulting for other brands, can you share maybe some, case studies or maybe some scenarios that you've seen for brands that have been trying to get covered by publishers? What steps did they take? What actions did you recommend for them in order to help scale their brand, get more awareness, and increase their sales? And you don't have to say any brand names if you don't want to, but ultimately, what have you seen in the brands that you've worked with?
I've seen that there is a slight, not a massive, but a slight disconnect in incentives and objectives. Brands are wanting coverage. Publishers need brands and PR agencies and partners that are supporting them to A, minimize the amount of traffic that are coming through their inbox, and B, make sure that they're being thoughtful about the recommendations that they're making. At both publishers that I've worked at, you'd be surprised at how many pitches are sent that are completely irrelevant or off topic to anything that we might have covered on our sites. Like Rolling Stone, likely not a destination for parenting content or wedding registries. Could test it, and it's likely that our readers are parents and are getting married, but it's not a subject matter that you're coming to Rolling Stone to seek advice on. Unconventional wedding dresses, that could be something that works well for BuzzFeed. Products that add value to your life that you never knew you needed. Things that solve life hacks that you didn't even know you needed to clean this corner of your room. Those types of things are serendipitous. They have an element of surprise and delight. They add value to the consumer journey or help them just, satiate that need for knowing that you have a surprise coming in the mail that cost you less than a dinner out on a weekend. So it's really being thoughtful and understanding the context and who you're pitching. What you've seen work well for them can be inferred by looking at the types of content that they write continuously and on a serialized basis, or the posts they're keeping updated. But also thinking about creative ways to get your product in front of those brands. Is it offering samples to a writer? Is it asking for feedback transparently and candidly? Is it, rethinking your traditional PR pitch instead of, writing it as a templatized, maybe overly ChatGPT informed template that goes off to every publisher? How can you tailor it to this person? How can you think about their context, their interest? Like the extra 5 minutes you spend trying to get to know the person that you're emailing, the likelihood that you're going to receive a response greatly increases. And so being strategic about what your outreach is and taking the extra few minutes might mean that your reply rate and conversion rate on those on that messaging improves that much more. And again, I recommended this earlier, but if you don't have the time or resources to really think thoughtfully about how you craft those messages, these agencies have been doing it for a long time, and they've been in this world for, and they have these relationships and they're trusted by these publishers. It doesn't hurt to let someone else do the work for you, to monitor your program, to keep an eye on it, and help you better understand the landscape that you're up against. Like, it is a really steep learning curve to not only understand a business deeply, but also understand the incentives of the partners that you're trying to work with. And so not being afraid to partner with experts to kind of help act as a launch pad for those connections is key.
Awesome. I love that. Are there any other kind of success stories that you've seen in those brands that you've consulted with in terms of getting coverage or exposure on these publishers?
On publishers and also with creators, diversifying your outreach. Sometimes going for like trying to meet with the heavy hitters is just as effective as working with a very niche and narrow in scope and coverage creator that has a very loyal audience that trusts them with relevant recommendations and purchases more so than anything that they might read from a larger publisher online. Making sure that you're considering both audience size, engagement rate, places where you can be most efficient and effective. TikTok has also been a very efficient vehicle for driving conversions for a lot of brands, and they're recognizing this themselves and are prioritizing opportunities for creators to monetize the content that they create to help increase the amount of high quality product recommendations that live in that ecosystem. And I hope this is still, I know we're recording this in September, I hope it's still relevant in March. But diversity is key. And it's not just about securing publisher placements, but also thinking about how you can craft a diverse and holistic strategy that engages your potential new audiences in a way that is meaningful and authentic and introduces your brand to spaces where you might not, corners of the internet that you might not have been exposed to before.
Yeah. I love that you touched on, TikTok and even, micro influencers. How important of a role do you feel like they play? Or for a brand owner, let's say, you're a small team. Yes, you're a seven-figure brand, but let's say you've only got 5 team members or so. Where would you recommend that they start? Like start with micro influencers and try to build up an army of micro influencers? Or would you recommend saying like, go all in, go try to go get covered by these big guys? Yes, it's a hard nut to crack, but if you can get your way in there, the returns are just massively outsized in terms of your return on investment. Where would you recommend? What would be the best return on investment for a 7-figure brand and they're trying to just get more exposure of their product to increase sales?
Never put all of your eggs in one basket. I'd say diversity is always going to be key. The formula is never going to be the same for every single brand. It depends on the context of the brand and when in the category and where the product is seen most valuable. You're not going to, at a certain point, you're going to reach the umpteenth micro influencer. That's a point of diminishing return. You want to be very thoughtful and strategic about who you're seeking out, who best aligns with your brands, and targeting, working with people whose audiences seem most relevant to the context and category of the product that you're trying to promote. Same with publishers. Don't ever make the mistake that going after the biggest brands in media and in publishing is going to immediately result in a return for your product. Your product may just be completely mismatched for their audience and what they're interested in shopping for at that time. You honestly may be more effective securing a placement that's efficiently distributed and interesting to a much smaller publisher that will return 20 times greater than even the largest publication. Like, speaking from example, BuzzFeed, we heard from other friends in the industry that we were referred to as the content monsters because we wrote so much content. Securing 1 placement or 2 placements within the many hundreds of posts that are published on BuzzFeed in the shopping section per month is not going to be as effective as you would think. Oftentimes, especially for smaller D2C brands, unless that placement kicks up some signal, gets on the radar of an editor who now sees that product within their top 20 and begins informing teams to recycle coverage because the audience is interested in it. Whereas if you get a placement at a publisher who is search forward, who has content that lives on Google and other spaces, is evergreen consistently, your long tail for an individual placement might take you a bit further than would your individual link on a social forward publisher like BuzzFeed. So I could go on and on about this for forever, but truly understanding the context, their traffic patterns, their content output levels, the pattern of performance that they see in their various ecosystems, how they're capturing traffic for shopping, understanding metrics, which you can typically get from like agencies or even the publishers themselves on like the long tail value of the placements that they publish, will help you make an informed decision. And again, I don't think any of these answers is the right answer. I've seen creators who perform at the same weight with much smaller audiences to publisher brands than, especially for smaller D2C brands or D2C brands in general, than I have some of the largest publishers in the industry. So it's really never take a full 100% bet on any. If you have a small budget, pick and choose and be very strategic about testing one or two in every single category and optimizing towards what you're seeing work best until you have more resources to test in other arenas again. What works or doesn't work today may work or not work tomorrow. And so you constantly have to be in a position of, an audience eventually becomes tapped, the well eventually runs dry. You have to be looking for the next and most efficient thing, or be open to revisiting things on your path to growth as your brand awareness changed, your consumer exposure changes, your knowledge and opportunity and learnings to be applied to old and new strategies changes. And so you constantly have to be aware of this evolution and reapplying and relearning and rewriting the script that you've adopted to make sure that you're optimizing at your fullest capacity.
You know, I absolutely love the recommendation in terms of like, you should always be testing, because you never know what's going to work for your brand. And I love that you talked about like, there's no silver bullet here. And every brand is going to behave very differently on very different platforms, and especially at different times of the year. And so it's important to get the lay of the land, see what other people are doing, but then go experiment. Go see, you know, how do TikTok affiliates work, right? Go experiment there. How do micro influencers work on, you know, on Instagram and partnering with them there? Or how does it work if I try to get onto Archer affiliates or Levanta? You could be surprised that you just list your products and bam, a big publisher picks you up and you have some success there, right? But you don't know until you try. And so I love that kind of like mindset and approach there. Awesome. Now, Jessica, last question here before we start to wrap things up. You talked about diversifying things, and you talked about like, hey, maybe you don't need the big, like the BuzzFeed content monster, so to speak. But how do you identify all of those other metrics that you talked about in terms of like, hey, this is how much like reach that this publisher might have and their rates and different things like that? Is there a software tool ideally that like I could go in and say like, hey, Josh, here's a list of all the different publishers you could potentially work with. And here's maybe like an approach, or here are the metrics behind them, so that I could determine like, hey, I'm going to use an agency maybe for these top guys, but I'm actually going to follow your advice, Jessica, and create very unique, tailored pitches to these other smaller publishers myself, because I feel like those are some that I could win. What are any ideas or tools, recommendations that way to give us a lay of the land of publishers that are trying to look for products that they could link to?
Yeah, I would say you're going to have, so in terms of total traffic size, Comscore is a service that advertisers tend to use to research total traffic and audience size for specific demographics across publishers. It typically can give you audience size for specific age ranges, 18 plus. Like if you want to narrow in on a different type of customer, it'll tell you what their customer size is. I do believe it requires a paid subscription. But that's a really great tool for just sizing out the total traffic and slice of the internet pie that publisher is receiving at any given point. That doesn't answer the question for how many of those eyeballs are going to shopping content, but it will give you directionally an understanding of the total publisher size and what percent of their audience might overlap with who you're looking to target with your brand. From there, you'll have to do some research. It is a little bit difficult from a brand perspective because typically if you're D2C, you're onboarded via one affiliate network. So you only have the context of that one affiliate network. And then if you're on Amazon, you have no context because Amazon doesn't share data about their partnerships with, their retail brands. So doing a little bit of combining research sources, understand what do PR agencies think about these publishers? How often do they perform? What is their scale? What have they seen the power and the behemoth of these engines perform well for like a long roster of brands that are on a variety of affiliate networks? Okay. Also asking the networks themselves, especially if you're onboarded with a larger network that has a large number of brands, I would assume Impact would have some great insights on performance for the heavy hitting retailers because they have a lot of the larger brands. They could probably tell you this publisher drives X% of our total publisher revenue. And these are our top 10 publishers. These are our lower 10 publishers. Could probably give you some directional insights. But again, it all depends on like some publishers may be the top publisher on some network because the brands that they perform best with are there. Whereas another publisher might do better in totality, but the majority of their revenue hitting partners are on a separate network. So you're trying to piece together qualitative data and perspective to and layering that against of what you can see via Comscore to size out the opportunity. Otherwise, you're kind of reliant on first party information that the publisher themselves can provide, or if they're like BuzzFeed, you could probably do some research yourself and kind of interpret what you will from their earnings statements and what they decide to share. But it is difficult. It is difficult if you don't have first-hand information yourself, and the information that you get from publishers individually might not be consistent. Some might be willing to share certain metrics versus others. It's really difficult to size up the opportunity independently. Also, the smaller brands, yes, you could probably go after yourself and kind of win those over directly, but I'm not sure it would be like they're a smaller brand, the likelihood that they're going to outperform a creator or a large publisher is probably lower. I don't see much value in taking that away from a PR agency, especially if you're contracting them. Like, just let them own the entire relationship. They're going to likely be reaching out to that publisher anyway, and it becomes very confusing and unfortunately annoying when, as a person who's on the receiving end of that emails, is getting 2 emails about the same brand from the same, like 2 different people. And you're like, who should I talk to? Who is more effective in like answering these questions? You kind of want to just centralize all your resources in one place and be totally hands off. It doesn't matter who wins it. You can ask to be copied on that outreach if you'd like visibility into how those conversations go. But I don't think, especially if you're contracting it out, it needs to come from separate sources. It's almost better if it doesn't. So, yeah, that is my recommendation there.
Makes a lot of sense. All right, to sum things up here for our audience then, Jessica, let's say you've got a brand, they've had success on Amazon, they have done absolutely nothing when it comes to media and PR. They've just sold products on Amazon. Where would you recommend that they begin? Give us a kind of a holistic, like, here's some quick hitting wins that I would do if I'm this brand owner that wants to get more exposure and I'm already successful on Amazon. What would be your recommendations? Where do they begin?
Reaching out to, if they have publishing contacts or if they're able to get their hands on a few writers and some email formats for some publishers that are relevant to them. If they'd like to do it themselves, that's a great place to start. Or I guess the early beginnings of a place to start before you're wanting to explore enlisting a larger entity to kind of help grow your brands, asking questions, just being inquisitive, like, hi, I don't want to pitch you yet. Tell me how is best to pitch you. What would you like to hear about my product? What is helpful information to provide? Is it deals? Is it samples? Is it an overview? Is it examples of where we've been covered in the past? What helps you? Unfortunately, the response from every publisher is probably going to be a bit unique, but that will help you kind of tailor what you send to those brands if you get a response a bit better. If you're not getting responses, then I think taking the steps to enlist agency help is probably the best and most efficient way to maximize your time. The fees per month aren't that low, and the amount of time that aren't that high, and the amount of time you'll save and not have to worry and also receive an automated report about their efforts will make a world of difference. It's easier to be the decision maker and give actionable direction based on the data that you're seeing versus being in the weeds, sending the emails, measuring the efficacy, tracking placements yourself, having to do all that information manually on top of then making strategic decisions. I think don't spend too much time spinning wheels if you're hitting a wall. Let someone help you take the reins and drive growth. And again, they know that they're specifically performance agencies. They know that they're built on driving growth, and their partnership retention is predicated on that. And so they're incentivized to show some results to maintain the relationship.
Awesome. Love that. All right, Jessica, as we wrap things up, I love to leave our audience with 3 actionable takeaways. So here are the 3 actionable takeaways that I noted. You let me know if I'm missing something.
Sure.
Action item number 1, I would recommend the lowest hanging fruit is just to get your products on Archer Affiliates, Advon, and Levanta. I think that you just get those products on there, and guess what? You may hit magic. Now, I think that's more of a rarity. Don't bank on it, but it may get picked up by a big publisher fairly quickly within maybe your first 3 months or 6 months that you've been on that platform. But it's never going to hurt to just connect your products on those platforms and just say, hey, yeah, if anybody does send a sale through here, I am willing to pay you 20%. You're going to get your brand referral bonus from the Amazon side, which is great. That's going to knock off another 10%. And then, so you're out of pocket another 10%. But for Amazon sellers, like our tacos numbers, total advertising cost of sales, it's probably over 10% anyways, right? You're probably spending that much on PPC. Why not get some outside traffic that could actually provide more juice to your organic ranking by getting that outside traffic and sale? So that's action item number 1. Action item number 2 is doubling down on those relationships. So don't just publish your products on Levanta, Archer Affiliates, and Advon. Instead, what I would encourage you to do is create a personal relationship with the CEO or somebody else that is there representing those brands to those publishers. That's who you need to get your products in front of, and you need to ask them. And hopefully you have a customer success manager at these different platforms, but you've got to get your products known and say, hey, how can you get my products in front of the BuzzFeeds and the bigger media publishers of the world? That's where it seems like the magic lies. And then my third and final action item here is to do not dismiss some of these micro influencers. And you talked about having success on TikTok. You've seen a lot of brands being able to reach out to these TikTok creators that have, loyal followings, or even on Instagram. Yes, they're not large, but sometimes you're saying that the performance outweighs what you may do with some of these big publishers. And so don't dismiss the micro influencers at all. There's a lot of great platforms. TikTok Shop itself is probably the best influencer affiliate commission program that I've ever seen, because all the data is in one app and it is so easy to communicate with creators and you see all the data there in real time. So from what I've heard in the affiliate and influencer marketing space, TikTok has built the end all be all, so to speak, when it comes to reporting and data and being able to contact and reach out to these creators. So don't sleep on TikTok Shop. Jessica, is there anything else that you feel like I missed that we need to communicate here to the audience?
That is it. You summed it up perfectly. Thank you so much for having me on the podcast. It's been great chatting.
Love it. All right, Jessica, final 3 questions. What is the most influential book that you've read and why?
I would say Dark Matter by Blake Crouch. It was a book that it's fictional, but it kind of reframes your thinking about your purpose and direction in life and the choices that you've made, and putting to rest ulterior outcomes, and not, instead of wondering what if, wondering how wonderful the choices that you've made have led to your path and what you've achieved so far. So that's my plug. I think it's been made into a television series, which I refuse to watch because the book is so good. So
love that. I have not heard of that book recommendations before, so I like a new one. All right, question number 2. What is your favorite AI tool that you've been using and why?
ChatGPT is really easy. I have used it for email responses that I haven't wanted to write, like LinkedIn posts. I've used it for like silly things. Like there are a bunch of interesting prompts and challenges that you can kind of poke around with and have fun with. I use it for recommendations. When I was writing content, I did use it for product recommendations at times. And it would be based off of bestsellers on certain websites with high reviews, just to supplement what I was already pulling. Of course, additional vetting was used to make sure that the products they recommended were actually valuable. But it is a very powerful tool. And I think more and more people and young employees and just people are a little bit tired of Google, to be honest, are finding it extremely helpful in answering questions. I think Google is becoming less of a powerful player in terms of driving decision-making, and platforms and services like ChatGPT, Pinterest, Reddit, TikTok are all eating away at slices of the proverbial pie. So I love it. I look forward to exploring other tools as they come available.
Yes. And what I loved about your comment there is that you are using it for product recommendations. So all the more importance for a brand owner to make sure whatever you can do to, get your products in front of these AI tools. And we actually had the owner of Product Pinion on the podcast a few episodes ago, and he shared his strategy for how he gets his products kind of recommended in Perplexity. So don't sleep on that one. Go check out that episode as well. All right. Now, third and final question here, Jessica, who is somebody that you admire or respect the most in the e-commerce space that you would recommend others should be following, and why?
I would say it's not necessarily a person. Sorry, I just put a piece of candy in my mouth at the wrong time. But a platform. I mentioned it in my last answer: Reddit, Pinterest, even TikTok. I mean, I know it's kind of a well-established shopping vehicle at this point. All of them are figuring out creative ways to introduce methods for recommending products to consumers in non-traditional ways. And I think as publishers kind of scramble to figure out new traffic sources, you need to look to the platforms that service them and the new and emergent platforms that are servicing consumers. If the publishers don't meet them there, Substack is another. If the publishers and content creators don't meet them in these spaces, they're only going to fall behind and deepen their reliance on traffic avenues and platforms that are inherently sunsetting and losing share of wallet and share of consumers at an exponential rate. So I'd say it's a platform, not a person.
I like that mindset shift. And I think that becomes even more important to go back to what we talked about here earlier, which is like test. Correct. As soon as new platforms come out, it is better to be an early adopter, because you never know when, you could hit success with something brand new. And so that would be my encouragement is you should always be testing. So Jessica, this has been an excellent episode. Thanks for your time today. If people want to follow you in your journey or reach out to you, where's the best place to do so?
LinkedIn is the best place to find me, specifically for work outreach. I keep my personal social channels close to the chest and very much separate from work and pleasure. So LinkedIn is best. And yeah, I look forward to hearing from anyone who has further questions or needs for consulting expertise.
Awesome. All right, Jessica. Well, thanks again for your time today.
You too. Have a great one.
Thank you for listening. Visit ecombreakthrough.com for more information. If you've enjoyed today's episode, the best way you can show your appreciation is by clicking the subscribe button and quickly leaving a review. See you again next time.